Hello, I'm Michael Verney and welcome along to the Indo GAA podcast with thanks to AIB. AIB is at the heart of Gaelic games across both club and county, and in 2025 they're celebrating a decade of sponsoring the All-Ireland Senior Football Championships. With this year's championship shaping up to be one of the most competitive in years, AIB is more excited than ever to bring fans closer to the action. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more. Well, delighted to be joined for a hurling chat by John Mullane. John, how are you doing?
How's it going, Bernie?
Another mad weekend, Mull. Your boys didn't deliver as I would have expected, to be honest with you, on Sunday, but they lived to fight another day. Just talk to me about that Tipp Waterford game. While I was looking at it, I was just thinking, oh, you just can't miss these chances and expect to still be in the game. You know, when you get your purple patch, you take it, you make hay, you go 6 or 7 up, and the complexion of the game changes. But when you miss those chances, it was like it just sucked the oxygen out of you a bit. And Tipp were so economical up front, in fairness to them.
Yeah, and I was actually on radio duties at Cork the weekend, and all those missed opportunities, as I touched on radio, they all add up. You know, when the final whistle is blown, they all add up. And unfortunately, those misses that we missed in the first half, you know, had a telling effect on the result. But
Mull, do you follow the snooker at all? No.
Oh, Christ, I do, yeah.
Yeah, so they always say in snooker that if you don't take your opportunities, that the snooker gods go against you, and the chances don't recreate themselves or whatever. And it's the same in hurling. You have your chances, and if you take them, the game just changes, goes off in a different direction. But ye were missing one end and Tipp were just flying them over at the other end, and rather than the oxygen being sucked out of Tipp, they were getting more energy on the back of their own scores as well. It's a killer.
Yeah, and particularly we went in at half time, we're down 3 points down at half time when we possibly should have been probably 3 or 4 points up at half time going in. Now look, you can flip that and say the 2 missed opportunities that Tipp had, goal opportunities, one with John McGrath going through, should have popped it to Andrew Ormond, would be most certainly in for a goal. And the other one then, probably the big call, and probably the one that, you know, people will really kind of home in on, was was it a penalty? Was it a penalty? Was it a black card? Wasn't it a black card? So that would have been another probably presentable goal scoring opportunity for Tipperary. So sometimes, you know, missed opportunities, they can kind of balance themselves out as well. But for me, I think it was when we hit that 50-minute mark, and, you know, we got 6 unanswered scores, got back level, 51 minutes on the clock, had momentum, had the crowd, big Waterford crowd behind us, had what I felt was the energy, had the breeze elements behind us. And I think the big one for me, the big missed opportunity, and I think Peter and the management team will look back probably scratching their heads saying, and we were all scratching our heads in the after the match saying, where was Austin Gleeson? And I even said it on the radio, you know, when we hit that 50-minute mark, got level, I even said to Pádraig, I said, now is the time to throw another injection into it and bring on Ozzy. And it was baffling. It was just so baffling how he didn't feature at any stage of a match. And look, even going back to it, I could understand, you know, the Clare game, you know, they were in a commanding position and they were probably going to hold him, and then they brought him. I don't think they brought him on at all for the. Did they bring him on for the Clare?
About 2 minutes at the end of the
game. Yeah, about 2 minutes, and I said, right, Jesus, that's good management, you know. And they're kind of, you have the fire in the belly for the next day against Limerick, and then they brought him on with 7 or 8 minutes to go against Limerick, and I'm thinking, hey, like, you're bringing him on, and I was looking at his kind of body shape against Limerick and saying, right, he's not there yet, you know, he's not there. He's probably a bit to go after coming back from injury. And I was thinking to myself, right, they probably shouldn't have brought him out around the middle third. And I keep banging the drum, throw him in on the edge of the square, leave him on the edge of the square. And then the weekend, I watched him doing the warm-up, and he looked an awful lot leaner. And I even remarked to Pádraig, I said, Jesus, this is perfect now for Waterford. They've a really kind of, you know, a more leaner kind of Aussie to call upon. And yeah, it was just a baffling one that that he didn't come on. And I suppose, look, if you're Austin Gleeson, you're probably going away scratching your head saying, a bit disappointed, probably dejected, and you're probably asking yourself the question, you're probably saying to yourself, well, am I in their plans at all? And I think a big part of both management teams this week for both Pat Ryan and Peter Creeley will be chatting to players, and most certainly one player I would imagine the Waterford management, and I would particularly be thinking probably Dan and Owen Kelly, who've probably been in these positions before. Owen went through it with Tipperary, and I know Dan went through it with Davy when Davy wasn't playing him, and he wasn't a bit happy. So I think those two guys have probably got to sit down with Austin this week and have a cup of coffee to him and say, look, Jesus, you're going to be big in our plans this week. And for me, I would be saying to Austin Gleeson, I would be saying, you know what, you're starting the weekend, and you know where you're starting? You're starting in the edge of the square. And we're just going to get ball into you. Our plan is to get as much ball into you. And I throw it back to Cork. I throw it back to Owen Downey and say, Owen Downey might be a little bit fragile. Seen what Peter Duggan done to him up in Ennis. Seen what Mullane got the penalty off him. And possibly, there's question marks, surrounding him in regards to the big man. Could you imagine throwing Austin in there on the edge of the square? And I wouldn't be waiting for 45 minutes. I wouldn't be waiting for 50 minutes. I would throw Austin Gleeson straight in from the get-go of the weekend. And I would actually make 4 changes the weekend if Waterford are to have any hope. I would bring back in Corrick Daly. He wasn't in the 26. I'd start Corrick Daly. I'd start Shane Bennett. But you can start Shane Bennett wing-back. You can start him in the forward line. I'd start Austin, and I'd start Patrick Fitzgerald. And I'd tweak it a small bit. I'd put Tig out in the wing, and I'd put Mark Fitzgerald centre-back. I felt Tipperary were very, very clever the weekend. Kind of a bit like Cork last year with Kyle Hayes, kept the ball away from Mark Fitzgerald. So I would do that little tweak, and it's not against Tig. I just think even putting Tig on the wing, it might actually, might re-energise Tig. You see it with Declan Hannon, it can happen, and you're seeing the effect with Kyle Hayes going in centre back, and I'd have that little tweak. Mark Fitzgerald centre back, Tig on the wing, and I'd bring in those four players, and I think that would really get Waterford people back excited again,
It's funny that you say that, Mull, about Aussie. I actually think it's gas when a team is beaten. I think caution will be thrown to the wind now. I think they'll just go for something. They'll have to go for something different, even if it's a bit of a Hail Mary, and even if it's starting Aussie. But I would expect a good few changes to be made by Peter Creeley and the lads, and they've nothing to lose now. Everything to gain. I'd be the same as you. I'd probably throw him in from the start. If he has a half, then see what you can get out of him for a half, and just ask questions of Cork. There's a bit of fragility there. Can you go after them?
But fairly, Michael, how fit do you have to be to play full forward nowadays? I mean, how fit was Christy Efron back in the day? How fit was Kevin Hennessy back in the day? How fit was the bomber Liston? How fit was Vinnie Murphy playing football for Dublin? Even Conor MacDonald came on the edge of the square for Wexford the weekend. I mean, and that's the way the game is going now. The variation of going short and there's going long. So I will be saying, you know what, go in the edge of the square. Don't move from the edge of the square. We'll get Desi in around you, maybe Stephen Bennett at times, and we have that outlet to go long, or to play the ball through the lines. And at times the weekend we probably dilly-dallied with too much ball. Got overturned on various occasions. And
I thought you overplayed it at times, Mull. I thought it was OTT now at times.
I did, and look, probably Desi is probably probably struggle the weekend, but how much did he struggle if you're not getting the ball into him? And even hearing some of the talk that I dropped Desi the weekend, Jesus Christ,
I hope.
Absolutely not. I mean, he has to start the weekend, and you're coming up against a Cork team now who are coming off the back of a Limerick defeat, probably going to be down their best defender who throughout the league, Niall O'Leary, probably going to be down a really, physical guy in Decky Dalton. Probably an awful lot of question marks are probably surrounding Cork after the weekend. And the one thing that Cork have in their favour that they're playing the Parky Queeve. They have a massive home follow. They're going to have a massive home following behind them. So that's going to be worth nearly 3 or 4 scores before a ball is thrown in. But I think that it's key for Waterford to get off to a really good start the weekend, keep the scoreboard ticking over, try and keep it tight at the back, try and stay in the game for as long as possible, try and quieten the Cork crowd, and try and bring it down the home straight. And I think all the pressure the weekend is on Cork going into this match.
Oh yeah, big time. Just rather than coming back to it, Mull, you've some amount of good and bad memories and indifferent memories with Cork and Waterford down through the years. When you think of Cork and Waterford from your own playing career, what's the first thing that comes back? Is it the I love me county interview? Is it the red card? Is it the hat trick? There's so, like, I was going down through it, just some of the games that you played throughout the noughties. My God, like trying to even whittle it down to the best 3 or 4 games. There's 7 or 8 unbelievable games. The games in Croke Park, the games in Thurles, like unbelievable. What's the one? Is there any one standout, or are there several standouts?
Look, for me, I suppose it will be 2004. Look, obviously it was a mixed day for me. I got sent off the same day, but not I'm all for creating history, and we created history. We became the first team to bring silverware into the county for the first time in 39 years. But trying to break the duck of beating Cork in a Munster final, I think that was the first time since '59 we beat Cork. So that, albeit I was sent off the same day, and even to see the scenes, and it was a sellout Munster final, 54,000. We were coming off the back of being beaten by him the previous year. Albeit I got the 3 goals, but yeah, I mean you could pick out any standout moments. Spinners, the dipper as we call it, the dipper free, and I mean, people be always asking, did he mean it? Absolutely.
You bet your bottom dollar.
He'd be messing around in training, and could be 45, 50 yards out, and you could have Stevie Brenner or Iggy on the goal, and he'd put this dip on, and you're kind of going, oh my God, how did he actually do that? But even that period between 2002 and 2007, I mean, there were just some epic games, and they were just free-flowing games, Bernie. We kind of went out with the attitude that, we're going to take Cork on, we're going to try and outscore Cork. I mean, outscore probably one of the greatest Cork teams of all time, who had, I mean, the array of talent that they had. But that was our mindset. We didn't go out thinking that, we're going to try and contain Cork, and hope to try and contain them and keep the scoreline down. No, we were saying, right, we're going to go out, we're going to attack Cork, and throw it back to them, and ask them the question, well, what are you going to do? And if they scored a goal, we'd come back with a goal. If they'd score 3 or 4 points, we'd reply. And I think that's why so many probably neutrals probably enjoyed those games so much. A bit like Tipperary and Kilkenny back in the late noughties. The late noughties.
But even thinking about it, Mull, I don't know if any rivalry over a period of 5 or 6 years has thrown up as many moments. McGrath's winner in 2002 in the semi-final after having the shoulder injury, your hat-trick, would say the sending off, Flynn's dipper, Cottle Nocton's goal off the bench, Ken's catch at the end of the 04 Munster final, Don Logue batting down the ball at the end of the 06 semi-final. Like, there was so many unbelievable moments.
And you even had the simple case where the three lads are missing. The 3 lads are missing, and even the pressure we were under going into that match, knowing that they were down probably one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time in Don Logue, probably one of Cork's best ever fullbacks, and the other one then was Sean Oak, probably one of the greatest ever halfbacks. And the pressure we were under going into that match, knowing that they were already missing 3 generational players. And Cork, to be fair to them, they really brought it that day. And I think we scored, was it 5 goals that day? And I think they scored 3. Did they score 3 or 4?
Yeah, you got 5-15. I think he wound up
5-15. Yeah, and I think after the first 20 minutes or something like that, I think there was probably 4 or 5 goals that they're going in. So even that, throwing an all sparkle into it as well. And even coming back then, as I touched on, our reward then for winning 2007, we had to go and meet Cork and, go meet Cork and play Cork in an All-Ireland quarter final, and then we had the replay, and we got over the line in the replay. But yeah, as you said, there's so many memories and so many moments that they look back and you look back and albeit Cork went on and won. That Cork team went on and won. Was it two All Irelands?
Yeah,
2 All Irelands, and we didn't. But you ask any of those Cork players, Sean Og, Joe Dean, Don Logue, we did have an awful lot of respect for our team, and likewise. We'd be the same. We'd have so much respect for that Cork team,
It's gas. I'm only even thinking about other moments like Ozzy's wonder goal in 14, Ozzy's solo and through goal in 2017 when he flicked the ball into the net as well. But one thing I did want to ask him, because I actually never spoken to you about this.
Even the last one, the Munster final under lights.
Yes.
The first ever Munster final under lights in 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the game finished about nearly, was it 9:30 or 25-10?
That's right, yeah.
It went on, yeah, and that was kind of the crowds were kind of after tipping at that stage because, I think the recession was after kicking in, but most certainly didn't affect the drama,
The last one I'll ask him, just on it. The interview in 2004, had you any reservations about doing that? Like, you would not see that, not in a month of Sundays. Now, would you see a player who was sent off in a big game come out and do an interview live on television? Had you any reservations about it? Because, like, you're an emotional man at the best of times, and I mean that as a compliment. You probably knew what was going to come out of you, didn't you?
Well, there's actually a funny one, and I'd be good friends with Lele Barry. Lele would have been the former under-21 keeper, and I remember I got sent off, and Justin Bailey looked at me, and I kind of went into the back of the dugout, and all the subs were in front of the dugout, and I was had my hands down in front of me or that, and all I could see was this kind of puff of smoke coming into me. You know what I mean? And whatever way I looked over at that. And there was Lele, stuck in the corner. Now, Lele wasn't on our panel, and he was having a fag, and Lele just looked at me like that. And he just nodded his head like that. And he didn't make me any better, like, you know what I mean? But how Lele got in there at all. But even that whole second half, I was just, praying to the gods. I said, just please, let us get the win, because I was probably thinking of the consequences of that. But if we lost, I was saying, like, I can't go home to Waterford after losing the Munster final the previous year. I mean, I would have been absolutely, you know yourself, you get sent off and whatever. But there's actually a funny story. Remember Stevie Brenner? Stevie left in the goal under his
legs.
Darren McCarthy went in. And Stevie told us this so funny. Stevie jumped in the car, got a taxi home with his wife Helena, and Helena was in the front, and Stevie was in the back. And the taxi driver said, "He said them two Dennis men nearly fucking did everything to lose it on us today. That Stevie fucking Brenner. As for that Stevie Brenner leaving in the goal." And Helena said to him in front of the car, "Well, why don't you ask him? He's in the back there." And the taxi didn't know where to look. But yeah, going back to the interview. Yeah, I suppose. Oh Jesus, I was more relieved than anything else that we got over the line. And then I suppose, look, all this. To be fair, a lot of my friends, close people within the club, and a lot of people I knew came over and, wrapped their arms around me. And
who was? And we love John Mullane. Who's that fella? He said more in the interview than you did.
Would you believe he's in my club, Martin Doyle, and we're actually on his 50th up in Kilkenny there. So 2 weeks ago, we're on his 50th up in Kilkenny. But I think he was the star of the interview. But even Tony O'Donoghue, like, he was so, I mean, Blake Ted has to go to Tony O'Donoghue that he probably just pulled me in, and I mean, he caught me off. Well, I wouldn't say he caught me off guard, but he caught me at a lovely time where emotionally I was just all over the place,
Yeah, it was manna from heaven from media point of view. Everybody knew what was going to come. But Mull, just obviously we focus on Waterford there and a bit on Cork, but Tipperary. You had it, I know, in your column at the start of the year that it was SH1T or bust for Liam Cahill and this group of Tipperary players. By God, they have answered any calls or any questions about them, and they look a rejuvenated side, a re-energised side. And even the 8-day turnaround didn't affect them at all the other day. Andrew Ormond, what a find. Jake Morris playing the hurling of his life. And there's a real feel-good factor about Tipperary now again. It's amazing how the wheel can turn, and can turn quite quickly.
Well, Michael, as you well know now, I've been banging the drum. There's been one person who's probably, been a big advocate or a big supporter of Liam Cahill, and that he was the right man, and that he took on the job when no one else was willing to take on the job. Now, I did probably question, the ballsy call of leaving Barrett off, and that can either go one of two ways. If results don't go again, yeah. And look, that was a big call when you really think back at it, and where they were at the start of the year, and where the Tipperary public, where, let's be honest about it, probably 75-80% were probably rowing the other way against Liam Cahill, and then they go and make that big call. But I mean, there's probably vindication now in that call, because you're looking at Robert Doyle going in cornerback. He's probably a younger version of Barrett. Kind of really like him. He's he brought in some of the youth in Darren McCarthy. You just touched on Ormond, and he was clever in still retaining the likes of Noel McGrath, and having the likes of Noel McGrath, his influence around the camp, and showing these young fellas what levels you have to be at to go and put that Tipperary jersey on. And what I really admire about Liam Cahill is that he keeps relating back to when you're representing and putting on that Tipperary jersey, you have to go and pride yourself in putting that jersey on, and give a performance for the jersey. And he keeps homing in on that. And I actually love that. And
that's the core of why everybody plays for their county, isn't it? That's like what it all comes back to. Forget about everything else. It's the pride in your county and representing your county, yourself and your club as best as possible. That's the foundation of it all. And we can kind of sometimes get lost in it all.
Yeah, 100%. And even as I said, to go and win a jersey, you see how hard it is to go and win one of those 26 jerseys, all right? So even to get into the panel and to get handed one of those jerseys, that's an honour in its own right. And then an even greater honour is to be in the starting 15. And even now the way it's stretched now, where you're going to come on, and some people, as you're honest, right, it does get lost in, and maybe it does get lost with some players. And even a small thing where, even early on in my career, and I've told you about this before, where I used to swap the jersey, and I used to be saying to myself, why am I giving that jersey away so cheaply when I've trained so hard, muck shit throughout the winter, to try and get one of those jerseys, then just say, hey, there you go, have jersey. So from after that, then I would never give away my jersey. I'd hold on to it, and if there was some sick kid, or if someone needed a jersey, and they said, "Geez, we'd love to have a jersey." I said, "There you go. You can have me. You can have me jersey," because there's value in giving that away rather than 100%. Giving it away so cheaply in the aftermath of the match. And I'll be straight, I used to really thrive on it, where some of the players had come over after the match. "Geez, John, can I have a jersey?" And then I go, "No, I'll have a promise to a fella after the match, and for a kid after the match." And I took more pride in that, more value in that. But it's great to see Liam Cahill, bringing those values back, and really highlighting those values of the pride in wearing that jersey. And even before the match, I just thought it was a touch of class. Roger Casey, who has been our kit man for 30 odd years now, even more. Lovely man, Roger. And I could see Roger. I was in the looking down, and Roger was waiting for Liam Cahill to come out, and Mikey Bevins, and he went straight over. Just to tell you how the man that Roger Casey is, went straight over to Liam Cahill, And the easiest thing for Liam Cahill to do was just shake his hand because he's caught up in the moment. No, I'd say he must have gave Roger about 2 or 3 minutes of his time and gave him a little pat on the shoulder, and he moved on. And he didn't really get excited. Now he got excited on 1 or 2 occasions on the sideline, but even his embrace with Peter after the match, I thought it was lovely. And I still think I think he enjoyed his couple of years down in Waterford, and I keep relating back to it. I think he done an unbelievable job down at Waterford, and we're slowly seeing signs that Tipperary, and he remarked himself that they're not back. They're on the way back. They're nearly on the way back. And as I said last year, stick with this man, give him a bit more time, and I'll tell you something, Michael. If you think where they're at now, if he's given a bit more time and given another couple of years, and look, that if he's up for the challenge himself, and Mikey Bevins, if they're up for the challenge themselves, and the other selectors that he touched on, Herity, and the other lad was
Declan Laffin.
Declan Laffin. You know how much of a good job they're doing. If they're up for it, they're the only men to bring Tipperary forward for the next 2 or 3 years. Which we're thinking is probably a transitional period,
Yeah, but he's blooded some
but
lads.
As you've seen before, Michael, a transitional period, it can happen quickly. It can happen quickly.
You can win an All-Ireland during the transition period.
Absolutely. And, momentum, results, feel-good factor, they go a long way to success. And by God, the feel-good factor is back in Tipperary.
It most certainly is, and he's blooded, as you said, likes of Robert Doyle, Sam O'Farrell, Darren McCarthy, Oisin O'Donoghue coming in the other day, looking like he's just made for that kind of scene, and that's all on the back of the under-20 success during the week.
But you know what I love, Michael? You know what I loved? And the player that he is, he's 34 years of age, generational player, right? Generational player. And this is probably the difference. Tipperary had a big call to make last week. They said, will we start Noel McGrath or will we hold him? And knowing that they started him the week before, and it was very, very good management, said, no, it's going to be very, very hard. We'll hold Noel McGrath for that 50-minute mark. And that's when probably Waterford got around. They probably should have brought in our generational player in Austin Gleeson, and it would have gave the crowd a lift. Noel McGrath comes on, gives the crowd a lift. He gets a score. And Michael, I just love that. He went to that. And you know what, Michael? People used to get on to me and I was saying, did I overdo with the fist pumps or did I overdo with what? No, I didn't, because I knew what I was actually doing half the time. I'd get the crowd right behind you. And when he done that, even when Sheedy done it in 2010, he went like that in the silent, and the Tipp supporters really roared him on even more. And even when Noel McGrath, and he's not that type of player, he doesn't play to the crowd, but for him to just go like that to the crowd, I just knew then, I said, they're going to be very, very hard to beat from here on in,
Yeah, I love to see. I'm not talking about Jurgen Klinsmann or anything like that now, but just a pump like that, get the crowd moving, because and he knew, I'd say, that they needed a bit more life even from the crowd, because it does help, because the game was in the melting pot there, and I'm all for a bit of a fist bump, not in the first minute after winning a free. Now I'm talking about after getting a big score, and I think it does. I think it does add to the whole occasion. I think sometimes we score a goal and we're like back out into the position and hands up and stuff like that. I do think, a couple of seconds of a celebration, enjoy it, and then get back into your position.
That's not. Well, look, back in my time, I jumped up in the rail and I scored a goal against Tipperary in the final, and I jumped up in the rail, and we probably overdid the celebrations, but back then, the puck out couldn't come into the whistle. But now you wouldn't get away with that nowadays. But even, to see even King Lynch when he got that score and he stopped and he gave a clinch to the crowd, and you could I'll be honest, I was listening to it on the radio coming back down, and then I watched it coming home, but you could even hear Darren Maloney, Brian Carroll even, were remarking about it. It generated so much volume from the Limerick supporters when he clinched that fist, and that's what it does. Those moments, and even that kind of body language for some of the players, it can have that effect on supporters. And why not play it in your favour?
But you know what as well, Mull? And even like it actually annoys me. It annoyed me, but you know the Tipp boys were like that in 2010 and pointing to their head and all that kind of crack. And even the finger wag and the fist bump. That's what kids are doing on pitches all around the country then as well. I remember Colin Corkery got a point against Kerry. It was in a Munster replay and he went like this with the finger like that. And I was going around doing it for about 5 years after any time we got a score in football. Like these are the things that people remember, and they're very kind of harmless things, but people copy them, and sure, that's what we want. We want kids to copy your heroes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but sure, even go back to when Brawley scoring the goal and he kissing to the. I mean, there's enough dull characters out there, and we need characters like that, and even people that will, bring a bit of charisma every now and again, or bring a bit of. A bit of showmanship to the match. I don't think there's anything, in my eyes, there's anything wrong with that,
No, nothing at all. Just for the lads in studio, we'll put up an old picture of Mullane with the jersey off up on the railing there while the show has been aired out, maybe, just to show how much it meant to him. I think it was you and McGrath up on the fence, was it, after the 0-2?
Well, would you believe my last game for Waterford, all the Waterford supporters were in the Kilkenny end. And I took off the jersey, and I knew it was going to be my last game. And I threw the jersey into the Kilkenny end. So whoever has that jersey, it was my last game against Cork in 2012. I just said to me, oh my now, I kind of started off in the terrace myself as a supporter, and you'll go back to being a supporter. But that's what I done in my last game, Well,
someone has a lovely little memento anyway. Just on Limerick and Cork, Mull. Absolutely devastating from Limerick. My God above. That has been brewing for 7 or 8 months, and it was absolute champagne hurling from start to finish.
Oh, where do we start? I'll tell you now, that first half, the best way to describe that now, right? Do you ever see a line ringmaster, right? A line ringmaster, right? And he thrown a piece of red meat in, and he thrown a load of lines in, chasing after a big lump of 3 or 4 lumps of red meat. That's what it was the equivalent of in that first half last weekend, where I'd say Kylie was kind of the line ringmaster, and he was just saying, every red jersey, you go after it like a lion, and you roar like a lion, and you attack like a lion. And boy, it was just ferocious. And I don't think Cork were ready for it myself. And I think I'm trying to break it down.
Basically what you're saying is the hunted has now become the hunter, and Limerick were hunting everywhere. It's gas when it's flipped. Cork were hunting last year. Now they're the ones, because they beat them twice last year, they're the ones being hunted now, and it's a different kettle of fish. And sometimes you're not ready for what the opposition are going to bring to you when they're the ones that are hunting and hounding.
Well, the two words that Kylie used after the match, and I always kind of home in these interviews, were hunger and they have the appetite. Well, you use those 2 words, hunger and appetite, and they probably didn't have the same levels of drive, when they faced Cork last year. But I'd say every time they come up against Cork this year, they are going to just say, right, we're vying for blood. And I'd say they were probably, and I even touched on it last week, I predicted Limerick would win this match, and I predicted it off the back of knowing that they were going to bring a level of performance. I didn't think they'd bring that type of level of performance, but I knew they were going to bring it. And I even said it to Will last week that, when you were hearing Kylie, putting out the rallying call to the supporters to come out and get behind the team, when you do that, you've automatically got to go and back it up with a performance. And by God, did they back it up? And they went even beyond, if you want my own honest opinion. But probably the big thing for Limerick is now, was that a max performance? Was that probably their max? Or can they even go beyond that? Because if they can go beyond that, I mean, it's going to be extremely hard to see any of the other teams reach that level. Because, even from a Cork point of view, now you're saying, right, it's a 16-point margin. how do we try and break down that 16-point margin? But from a Cork point of view, they won't even be thinking along those lines. They'll be thinking about the weekend is Waterford. How are we going to overcome Waterford? But if Cork, were to get over Waterford, they're back in it. But if you ask John Kiley the weekend, and he's going to sit back up with his feet up, he's going to have a nice cup of tea with the wife and the kids, and I'd say he's saying to himself, he's hoping Waterford take out Cork the weekend, because I still maintain that Kiley still believes that Cork are probably the one team that can trouble Limerick. Now you might say after being beaten by 16 points, that's a bit of a crazy call, but they did beat him twice last year. And you might think I'm mad, Michael, and everyone says that.
I do, Mull, to be honest with you.
No, but I am mad at times, yeah. But I actually know, and I'm starting to see that myself at times, But there's one thing narrative out there that Limerick get better as the competition goes on, and when they get into Croke Park. I think if teams are to have a chance against Limerick this year, I think it might be more in Croke Park rather than the Gaelic grounds. And I seen that firsthand down at Welsh Park when I even walked in 3 weeks ago into Welsh Park, and Welsh Park is a tight confined pitch, and I kind of went, holy mother of God, where are Waterford going to find a space today in Welsh Park? And likewise, the Gaelic grounds plays tight. And there's such big men, and they're so big even with Donoghue and Hayes as centre back. You can't really get at them. So even I think for teams now, even if whoever they play in the Munster final, I think Limerick will be strong favourites. The fact that it's probably going to be played in the Gaelic grounds. If it's Cork or if it's Tipperary, probably could. Is it Thurles, is it?
Could be, yeah. Not sure now yet. To someone.
Yeah, well. I think either way, I think either ground will suit Limerick. Because they're so big and they're so strong. But I think maybe Croke Park might be. If Cork can stay alive, and they do happen to meet Limerick in the Munster final, and they come up short, I think their best opportunity might be in Croke Park in a wider dimension field. But again, as I touched on. That's John or Pat Ryan won't even be thinking of that. His main focus will be trying to get over Waterford for the weekend, which will be difficult,
Yeah, and I know you're concentrating your column this weekend is on whether the Rebels can rise again, so that'll make for interesting reading on Saturday. Looking at Leinster, Mull, the maddest game of the weekend by far was Kilkenny and Dublin. A crazy game. Kilkenny got 4 goals in the first half. All were defendable, realistically. They were all kind of soft goals, and definitely the return of the long ball and that ignorant ball to the edge of the square is definitely well and truly back. And they were 16 up a couple of minutes into the second half, and Dublin got it back to 2 by the 69th minute and could have had it back even further. It could have had it back to 1, only Owen Murphy pulled off a deadly save from Ronan Hayes. And Kilkenny got a goal from Billy Ryan and won by 5. But what did you make of this? I'm still not sold on Kilkenny. I'm not sold on them. I don't think the strength in depth is there. I don't think they kill off teams like they did in the past. And I don't think they would have, and Derek Ling didn't like me kind of referring to previous generations and previous teams because this is the current team. But they don't kill off teams like they used to before. Where do you stand on Kilkenny at the minute?
Sure, look, there were 16 points up. Now, look, you can break it down, break that 16 points down, and say, look, probably 3 or 4 of them goals were probably presented, largely by Dublin errors or mistakes. At the end of the day, look, I suppose it happened in the past where was it during COVID? They were,
16 went back to level. Actually, they won by 1.
They were 16, and even at that semi-final that year against Waterford, I think they were
9. 9, I think. Yeah.
Was it 9 up? It's probably not something you relate to a Kilkenny team where if they're in such a commanding position that a team, and I wouldn't call Dublin a lesser team, but a team that let's be honest with it, Dublin are not a Limerick, Dublin are not a Cork, Dublin are not yet. Dublin are not a Clare. But for a team like Dublin to to get it back to 2 points and bring them down the home straight. Yeah, you can see why questions would be asked, but I would be more homing in on the fact that when Dublin did get it back to 2 points, how there's not really much being said about how Kilkenny reacted and responded and went up the field and got the next couple of scores and got the all-important goal. So, look, at the end of the day, they're in a Leinster final. They are where they want to be. They're still going to be a difficult challenge for any team, whether it be Dublin or Galway, whoever comes out of that match the weekend. That's going to be a cracking match to look forward to. So yeah, I still think they're in a commanding position, and I still believe if they win Leinster and they get that 4 week break and they can get all the bodies back, they'll be nice and refreshed. They'll have a lot of energy in the tank. I still think they'll be a difficult opponent for any of the Munster runners-up teams, whoever comes out of the other side, or be it the Munster third team or the Munster runners-up. So most certainly, I wouldn't be hitting panic stations yet or hitting the panic button yet. Now they're down to Wexford this weekend, which we are actually covering that match, and I think probably it's a game that's probably not at stake, but it's Kilkenny Wexford fixture, and I think Derek Ling will be anxious to go down to Wexford Park the weekend. And look, Wexford have probably had the kind of small bit of the Indian sign over the last couple of years. They've gone toe to toe with them, and I think Galway Wexford are going out of the championship. I think Wexford will still want to go and beat Kilkenny. If it was a game of tiddlywinks, Wexford will still want to win that match. So it's still going to be a good test for Kilkenny the weekend, and we'll learn and we'll know more about Kilkenny after the weekend, and most certainly the Leinster final.
Yeah, as you said there, Dublin and Galway is a fascinating game. Basically, like a de facto Leinster semi-final up in Parnell Park. And obviously, Micheál Donoghue's over Galway and he was over Dublin the last 2 years and gave the likes of Brian Hayes and a few more their debuts. So that's going to be kind of an interesting kind of facet to that game. Antrim and Offaly's a huge game. Jesus, massive game. Like, Offaly are playing 1A in the league next year. Like, going back to the McDonagh would be just a nightmare, and particularly when you see even the minor footballers winning last night and all the kind of goodwill and positivity around it. It'd be a disaster if they went back down. Just one thing I do want to focus on, Mull, the McDonagh Cup. One thing we were not expecting, and one team we were not expecting to be talking about in the McDonagh, is Kildare. Before this year, Kildare were 0 from 8 in the Joe McDonagh Cup. They've won 3 out of 4 games so far this year. Beaten by Kerry the first day, beat Westmeath, who were third favourites, went to Carlow and beat the pre-competition favourites, went to Laois and beat the second favourites, and now they play down, and if they win or draw, I think they're in a McDonagh final. So a team that was in third tier last year is nearly 70 minutes away from being in top tier in 2026. Like, it's a remarkable story, and like Brian Dowling has made, he's just, I don't know what he is. He seems to have a bit of a golden touch. He has it in Cairns, he had it with the Kilkenny Camogie team winning 2 All-Irelands, and he's brought it up to Kildare, and they're right on the verge of something unbelievably special at the minute.
Yeah, like, I mean, I watched the 2A final when they played down, and it was in a kind of up in
Inniskeen, I think.
Yeah, and the conditions were tough, and Down kind of got on top of them in the second half. And I mean, if just what you've just touched on there and everything that you've highlighted there, if you would have said in the immediate aftermath of that match against Down in the 2A, that they would now find themselves in this position, now facing into play down, knowing that if they beat Down, they guaranteed a spot in the Joe McDonagh final. And as you just touched on, they got off to such a slow start and were probably at a low ebb, probably coming off the back of that 2A final loss, and then got beaten by Kerry. But I mean, to beat the two front runners, Carlow and Laois, and to beat them probably comprehensively, I would say comprehensively by a reasonably nice margin, that tells you that they are in a really, really good place right now. And I mean, as you just touched on, it would be a remarkable story.
And we're crying out for it, Mull, aren't we? We're crying out for another team close to the top table. And we've talked about Naas and various bits and pieces, but they're nearly there.
Nearly there. And look, what it would also do, it would inspire the next generation of up and coming Kildare players, and it would inspire probably the younger generation that are probably starting out 6, 7, 8 years of age that might be, considering, will I or won't I pick up a hurley? And they might say, well, look, I'm only going to focus on football. But if they see a winning Kildare team and they see a Kildare team competing at Liam McCarthy level, it most certainly has a knock-on effect at that age bracket of probably between 6 and 8 years of age, where you're trying to get kids to trying to get kids to kickstart their hurling career and get a hurley in their hand,
And I know we've talked about structures before and getting rid of the preliminary quarterfinals, but imagine whoever they play, if they qualify at the weekend, regardless of how the McDonagh final goes, imagine Cork rocking, or Waterford rocking, or Tipp rocking to Newbridge to play Kildare. It would be unbelievable, and you'd hope that it would inspire the next generation. It'd be something that we never thought we'd see.
Yeah, geez, what you mean? I haven't even thought about that. The McDonagh, the preliminary round, as you just touched on, and and obviously it probably would be, David versus Goliath match, but. I mean, to have, just say if it was Austin Gleeson or Jamie Barron or say Patrick Horgan or Dara McCarthy or Noel McGrath coming to town, I mean, that would be fantastic,
Yeah, it'd be brilliant. Mull, thanks a million for your time. We'll talk again soon.
You're welcome, very on the ball, buddy.